Today we're making some super cool tool handles. Alright, they're a little bit nerdy, but if you're a beginner woodworker or a beginner carver, you might like this project because it's pretty easy and you end up with something practical in the end. I'm using basic tools, so let's go ahead and get started. And yes, I'm using driftwood for this project. You can make this out of a stick if you want, or a piece of round dowel, doesn't really matter. Now, if you are going to be using this tool handle for a chisel, I would recommend you get a hardwood of some kind, maybe oak or ash, or hickory. Since driftwood can be very soft, I chose to make this a handle for a file, and I think it'll be strong enough for that. Anyways, I basically started by making 2 stop cuts with my saw, and then I used my gouge to shape the eyes. And I just carved right towards that stop cut, and that's pretty much it. We've got the shape to the eyes. Not bad. Now it's time to work on the smile. And for this, I'm using a skew chisel. I found it was a lot easier to use this over a flat chisel for some reason. Maybe it's just personal preference. But I've also done things like this with just a regular knife. So if you don't have a skew chisel, improvise. And there we go. We've already got a face with 2 eyes and a smile. Now let's add some teeth. Now for this, I'm using a small gouge. But you could easily use your larger gouge as well if you have one. Feel free to get creative with this. Just notch them out, top and bottom, and boom, we've got a mouthful of teeth. I mean, it can't really get much easier than this. And I decided to add some pupils to this one. This was actually the first time I tried this, but it was pretty easy. Again, I just used the gouge to shape the pupil, and then just carved towards it from the outside of the eye. And I did add some eyebrows as well. I didn't get too much footage of this, unfortunately, but you get the idea. And there we go, done. I know, I feel like I'm missing something here because this is almost too easy, but that's literally all I did. Carved this in probably about 15 to 20 minutes. By the way, thank you to all my Patreon supporters. I really appreciate it. If you guys want to buy me a coffee, consider becoming a member. Cancel anytime. And now it's time to make this into an actual tool handle. And for this, I'm using a little ring as a ferrule. And this ring is actually a piece of 3/4 inch black iron pipe that I cut out. And it's just under 1/2 inch wide. So I marked the inner circle on the end and the width of the ring on the outside of the handle. Pretty self-explanatory. Then I used a knife to score it, and I slowly started making that tenon. Now you can see this wood is very, very soft, but I've got a way to fix that with some 5-minute epoxy. I'll get to that in just a minute. Now if you rush this, you might take too much material off, so I suggest just taking your time, having a coffee, just slowly pick away at it until you get it just about right. And then just switch to a file to really fine tune it and get a nice snug fit on there. That's pretty good. But unfortunately, we've got a little problem. Worms. This soft stuff here, that's from wood beetle larvae digging their way through there. And we've got a soft spot in the middle too, which happens with some sticks. But this is an easy fix. We're going to put it in the microwave, nuke those little worms. I'm going to pick that soft stuff out and drill the center of the tool out about 2.5 inches deep. And this is where the epoxy comes in. I'm just using 5-minute epoxy from the dollar store. It's my go-to. Can't beat $1.50 Canadian. And I just fill this up. I wrap the tenon with some tape and fill that up a little bit. And even though it's 5-minute epoxy, it is best to let it cure for at least 12 hours. And as you can hear, rock hard. Now I know some people will probably say, oh, that's going to be brittle and blah, blah, blah. In theory, maybe. But in reality, I've just never had a problem with using epoxy like this. So I'm just going to keep doing what works. Oh, and I also glued the ferrule in place as well. Then I glued some sandpaper on a flat surface and used that to sand everything nice and smooth. And there we go. We fixed that soft wood. It should be more than strong enough for a file. I obviously wouldn't use something like this for a chisel, like I said at the beginning of the video. And I just drilled a small hole and I just tap it in place. Got a nice friction fit. And we are good to go. Now you can take a regular tool and make it a super cool tool. Or a nerdy tool. Whatever. I like it. Alright, thanks for watching, guys. See you next time.